Greetings, greetings. Welcome all to Dorsey's Resource Channel. This is the original channel. The title of this video is Happy New Year 2026 as I reflect on 2025. On my part, just wanted to come. This is like an impromptu video, basically, uh, just an impromptu video from my subscribers that have continued to stay loyal. Appreciate those, the few out there that still support the channel, still rock with me. Even though it's been a long time, I don't really do videos that much anymore. But those of you from time to time, I do get text messages from. Also, big shout out to the subscribers who send me info that still follow the stuff I'm into dealing with the redemption education, I'll say. Kind of speaking in code. I wanted to do a video before the end of last year because we're now officially into 2026. This is the early morning. Didn't mind. I got a lot of time on my hands. It's currently right now, even though I'm at work at the slavery plantation. I'm not complaining. It's time and a half holiday pay, by the way. So I don't mind. I actually love those opportunities, by the way. But sometimes when the schools are down, the hours can get skimmy like that. So a lot of people may be competing for, how things are set up for those that still punch a clock. Um, I wouldn't have always necessarily, I could have been in a position to be out of this a long time ago, but I'm still, working the trials of Job, going through the trials and tribulations. But I'm making progress. Some things I see as a visionary for things that's coming down the road. I'm seeing things that are unfolding, by the way, that are manifesting and actually coming to pass. But the reason I titled this video, as I reflect back on 2025, as we're now into the year of 2026, but I like to reminisce, just me personally, just because I have a good memory. Sometimes people confuse it that you hold on to the past, but there's a saying my mentor taught me years ago that I love this cliche: the past is history, the future is a mystery, the very present is a blessing. The reason why people take pictures, photos, like to share them on social media, you have those, is for the memories behind those moments. If you document the moments and times with family members or close friends or events, things that you've done in your life, by the way. So I like to take the time to reflect. But 2025 was another miraculous year for me. Very interesting. As we were actually leaving 2024 on Christmas Day, which was Christmas, of course, just recently passed for 2025, but referring to 2024, I had experience that I had never done. I had a major injury where I had bought myself a Christmas gift, and I injured my back. It was an EcoFlow, one of a portable power station. I can't remember which model, but EcoFlow. I was talking with one of the staff member, one of the schools I was sent to work. I was covering for someone on the east side of Detroit, and I was talking with one of the staff members, and he actually mentioned real cool brother that he had an EcoFlow device. He was familiar with what I was talking about. That their devices are like dead weight. He had a much smaller version, which I was considering getting that version. I actually like that version. It's portable. I had my eyes on it for quite a while. I just never got around to purchasing it. But their devices are real heavy. If you know anything about these portable power stations, the one I have is a big device. It was like a fire sale, like a deal you can't refuse. And last November of 2024, I had sold a significant amount of my cryptocurrency, and I took a portion of those earnings, and I basically bought myself a portable power station. A friend of mine asked me, "It's like, what did you do with it? Because you injured your back significantly." I was like, yeah, I know, but it still actually came in handy. Actually, I had a power outage or electrical outage. It's the first year in my lease because I had just moved to a different apartment. The previous apartment I was living at, I was there for 14 years. 14 years. Solid stability. They just kept going crazy, going up on the rent so high it was ridiculous. If I had known years ago, I would have had a home already. But it's one of the things you live and you learn. Being the oldest child, I didn't really have a lot of mentors there, people to really guide me. You kind of thrown out to the real world, just being real. Um, you kind of thrown out to the wolves, and nobody tells you. You don't have your network doesn't know anything. You just do what you can, just basically to survive. And the previous place I stayed at was cool and everything, but the last couple of years there, I felt they weren't doing enough, and some other things happened. I won't go into details about this, neither here nor there. And I felt it was time to move. So I'm glad, appreciate the little things in life. I have a roof over my head. Basically, I don't leech off of nobody. I don't mooch off of nobody. I haven't had to. I said when I first moved in at the previous apartment was September 2010, and I was there until September, literally the beginning, the end of August of 2024, going into September, as I transitioned into moving into my new place, different part of the city. So I'll probably pretty much leave it at, still on the west side, but different part of the city. But I reflect on last year specifically because at the end of 2024, the reason I told this story, I hurt my back significantly. That was the first time ever that I experienced any type of, like, from a major injury, excruciating pain that just seemed like it wasn't going to go away for months. And then I actually fully healed from it. By the way, going towards, not quite towards the middle of the year, but you could say I had a good recovery time. 3 to 4 months later, it started. Basically, was one of the moments where the pain completely dwindled, completely went away to the point I didn't even notice it, because I was, prior to that, I was dealing with mild sciatica anyway. So I may have had, I've been unaware I had a herniated disc or bulging disc that I was unaware of, because ironically, I had physical therapy the day, basically New Year's Eve, before now we're going into 2026, because I had to work, knew I had to basically do a night shift that started. But prior, earlier in the day, I had randomly chose a different location. I could have gone to the same location, but that was only the second time ever that I've had physical therapy, and I just felt trying a different location instead of going to the one in Ferndale. I went to one in Southfield, by the way, and they were pretty cool. The guy there that helped me, basically, I knew it was going to help. Basically, the previous place, when I was at Ferndale, the guy there was cool, but I just randomly just decided through my health insurance, when I doctor and they called, I actually was surprised because I thought the doctor had forgot about it when I spoke to her, but they called me up and scheduled an appointment separately. I thought that was ironic. The last day of the year, because the therapist asked me had I had done that before. I said earlier in the year was like the first time ever. But last year, 2025, was a very, very interesting year for me. As I reflect back, uh, I learned a lot of new information, by the way. Even at this age, the age that I'm at now, getting much older, you learn things, and there's things I was sharing with a friend of mine that uh, you have new experiences that other people may have told you about that you might be experiencing for the first time. A friend of mine, I asked him, I said, "Do you really catch this, have a network of people as you get much older. You live in your decades we're into the future now, and just from life experience and speaking to either different relatives or close friends of the past, you ever noticed that there was experience that someone told you about that they had that you never experienced before, but you might end up experiencing that exact experience or something similar years later is what I would describe it as, the things people told me about years ago that I'm experiencing now that shows growth. Not just from my job and the workplace, I've noticed, but even in my personal life, is you gain wisdom from it, the mistakes that you made. And I told the previous story, some people had told me privately when I was on the Telegram room. I haven't been in there in a while, actually. I kind of faded away. I've been meaning to because I was part of several groups that I had joined on there. But like I said, I haven't been on there in a while. But some of the people on there told me they liked the stories that I told, basically, and some of the things that I shared. And I'm just grateful as you get older to be humble. We're still here. Some people ask me in the past, compared to, I know people want to know about the dinars and stuff like that, and what's going on with the reset or even redemption information. Kind of outgrew the level of knowledge that I could keep up with because there's been a leapfrog in the technology. There's so many people, it's a plethora of people that are teaching information. There's people that are really good, and I didn't want to, kind of be all over the place too. It's kind of hard for me to kind of pick a thing and kind of stick with it. I've always been versatile when it comes to learning about that information, but I think it is related to some things that I'm being told is getting ready to go down. But we've heard the same old before, the same old story when it comes to the so-called reset. But I heard things maybe supposedly really different this time. I could be doing videos speaking about precious metals, silver. I thought that was the idea that I had, like even on my newer channel, but it never really transpired like that. And when I would try to get around to doing a video, because I like to put a lot of thought into it, and it just I kind of lost the momentum compared to when I used to do videos consistently years ago. And part of that is due to the censorship that I went through as well. Some other things I didn't want to talk about that. But once again, I'm reflecting back on 2025. There's one story I shared with a friend of mine how I had that situation. I told the story already a few times, you could say, where I was at work and I had an infatuation instead of maybe to reword it from saying I fell in love, because love is a powerful word when it comes to knowing somebody, and I felt I didn't really get to know this person, but I did a lot of work behind the scenes. By the way, I had shared with a close friend of mine. He actually felt that the information I shared, the way I articulated it, he felt I should do videos about how he felt it could help out other men or other guys. But I kind of just did it privately, my own personal journey of self healing. I learned a lot about myself. I figured out the reason why. I think strongly the reason why she pulled back at the time, and the mistake that I made, I blame no one but myself in that situation. I take full responsibility, but I was really more so very upset, very mad at myself. And but as a result of that, there's blessings that can come, blessings in disguise that can come from different experiences that we have too. I learned this years ago, being involved in a house fire. My mother said this, one of my siblings that was responsible for starting the fire, which would not, but she said it actually turned out to be a blessing in disguise. I remember her mentioning the house got remodeled after we spent a while. There was a lot of work that had to be put in, and before we were able to move back in or whatnot. But it's one of the things you can look at from other perspectives. And I told a friend of mine I wouldn't have learned about this particular website that I discovered, where you were able to download ebooks for free. And for several months in a row, it's like I was literally going because I was searching for information because with that situation that I knew what I was getting myself into as well, by the way. But what I didn't know is that my work schedule would be unpredictable to the point I would not be sent back over there. But I had a feeling that that was going to occur because there were some other coincidences and things that took place uh, when I, had my eyes on the young lady that I felt, very, very attractive to me. That had that to me when I explained to someone else one of these dating apps I was speaking with recently, that this particular person, the reason why because the person I was talking with on the dating app is funny, told me, said that you just want to holler at doctors. And I said, no, I was laughing. I said, no, this just wasn't that. But when I did find out that she was, it did kind of change things in a way, but it was mainly because I had other doctors, by the way. The young lady may not know on the dating app. I've had some women who messaged me specifically and said that they told me they were basically because I had a lot of women coming at me, and that's another thing I wouldn't have never found out about these particular sites. That was later down the road before last year ended, going towards the latter half of the year, just actually after half of the year that I wouldn't have actually never. Another thing I told a friend of mine, not only did I discover from that whole situation this website where you can download free ebooks. So a couple of people, friends were like, where is it at? Like, send me that information. And practically, it was funny how God, how I view things, or the Creator, when I went through this journey. Some would call a self-discovery or self-healing or mastery. Uh, trying to feel like find myself doing deep soul searching, and it one thing led to another that I was just absolutely blown away from because I felt that I needed to know more information because I was disappointed in myself. But what it caused, that situation, it caused self-reflection, it caused self-actualization, it caused me to look back and reflect on myself and say, this is what you need to improve on. But going on this journey, I had to put in work. So actually, a lot of things were going through my head at the time. Plus, I was also studying at the same time. A friend of mine was helping me with several trusts that are set up, which I'm still learning about. I had to take a break from because some other things took place as well very recently as I reflect back on 2025. But that's another amazing, miraculous thing is I had an individual I've known for quite a while that helped me set up several trusts, just being low key about it. Professionally done, by the way, but I'm still learning, and they're actually really fully complete. The only thing that I say is missing is the tax ID number. One of them is completely well. I won't go into details too much about that particular type, but it's very powerful. But the other two are done in a unique way that some people didn't even know was actually possible. But they are notarized, by the way. And if you don't know, a notary is an officer of the court too. By the way, there's legal binding documents. I also have the embossers that go with it. The special paper that's on one of them had to fall under the category of when it's to be done properly. If it needed to be scrutinized or looked at, by the IR, alphabet agency. It passes qualifications as far as having international paper because of the nature of the type of trust that it is. So it was even all the way down to specific type of paper that had to be ordered for. It just wasn't just bonding paper, but under international standards because one of them is under a different category, the way it's structured, by the way, and that has a specific purpose. But there's ways that it's structured in such a way because it's backed by a tangible asset, by the way, which is powerful. People, when you there's many that don't understand contract law, but there's many people that are familiar with NARC's handbook or the Wise Concise Trustee Handbook, and then there's another one that was done some years later when the contractarians put out an ebook for those that study redemption education. But it's whole new levels to that type of info. So that's another amazing thing that took place in 2025 as I reflect on the year. I appreciate the elder person I refer to, I keep nameless, that's private. As we, work together, we embark on ventures behind the scenes, and we try to make it to the next level. And there's some things that I planned for this year, 2026, that I kind of discussed. I said I got easily to tighten up, my paperwork, being on the do not detain list, diplomatic immunity. There's something I found out a part of the year. I don't remember specifically, but once I did, I corrected it. I found out that I was re-registered to vote at a certain point without my knowledge, and something told me one day. I did a search on the Secretary of State's website. I just happened to go there randomly because I've always known for the state of Michigan to look up if you're a registered voter. You can go on the Secretary of State's website. That's for our Department of Motor Vehicles for the state of Michigan. And I typed in my name, and then nothing came back. But then I did a search for my driver's license number, which I remember by hand, and boom, it came up. And I said I traced it back to what took place, and what happened was the year prior when I had moved to a different address, different apartment. The girl who worked at one of the secretaries of state, she was giving me a hard time about when I asked her to laminate the new address on the back, because when they put the stick, just the regular sticker, it can fade. Because what happened, the reason I had to go back, I had made a certain order where I had to buy I had to get particular silver for a particular type of trust, and the precious metals dealer that I went through, there was something slightly off, and I found out it had to do with the address. Then I looked at it, and it threw, because of the last number, the way it looked, it was 8. One part of my zip code was made to be a 0, and I was like, oh man, I said it kind of faded. So I said they're going to really need to print me out a new one and laminate it. So when I go back, they have a thing now where they say that you automatically register. What they don't tell you is that you have the ability to opt out. A lot of times people just go along just to get along. When I won't go into details in depth, but there's people that already know when you enter into different contracts, a lot of things we engage in this society, people are not aware, have a trust relationship or contracts that are attached to it, whether verbal, written. That's why, apply for health insurance, health care, you see these disclaimers where they want you to sign this paperwork, and they say, do you give consent? Or they ask you, a lot of times people just skip over it, and they just go along and say, hey, nobody asked a question when someone says, hey, you need to go out there and get a driver's license. But do you know that you made an agreement with the state that you've read the entire motor vehicle code and that you can recite it by the entire motor vehicle code by heart? And they hold you accountable, but they've given power over to the state, whatever state that you're in, just to keep it basic. But nobody asks these questions. And there's ways to also circumvent these contracts or get around read these contracts as well, in terms of not where you're not doing anything, the thing that people misconstrue about the so-called sovereign movement or redemption education or status correction is that, oh, these are people that think they're above the law and they're trying to get away with something. And the only truth that I can see is when some people bring up, well, they see it as loopholes. And there could be some truth to those other things, but I studied the legitimate aspect for years. And there's people that have transitioned that have actually made it all the way over to the other side. And I actually know someone that has, and I've shared that privately with the groups that I've spoken with on Telegram, different rooms of people on there. And there's people that are at different levels because the information is kind of unconventional. You won't learn this type of information. It's traditionally not taught in a college university. This information is unconventional, but it is, yet it's very real. And I had debates with a friend of mine who's been on the fence about this type of information for years, and I understand where he's coming from, because he has a family, and years ago I didn't know as much information that I know now, but I said, me, myself, personally, I have a better understanding of how the whole entire system works when I even study other governments from around the world, how they operate, how people give jurisdiction away. And I don't have to be a lawyer or some type of legal expert, just like you don't have to be a doctor to heal yourself. You don't have to necessarily go through full years of medical school or residency just to learn that there's other ways to heal yourself. Now, I still give credit to the medical system, but I advise people to learn things for themselves. But I'm just using that example. Some people think, oh, you have to become the equivalent of a lawyer or a judge. No, you don't. You just have to learn the correct information, because you have people that are in those prestigious positions or what's seen as prestigious that don't know or have an understanding. And they've come across people who are very well studied, very sharp. And I've known numerous stories. You won't necessarily hear about it because those channels that always try to so-called discredit sovereign citizens or try to make people look stupid, they'll show the videos of people get their windows bashed out by police officers, but they don't never show the videos of people who are successful, that have, literally shut down lawyers or judges, or had cases dismissed, or been asked to leave, and there was no way that they knew how to put charges on them, and other different techniques and things, because I'm someone in the know and I've established connections with people throughout the years. I've actually helped people behind the scenes, even though I have not made it completely out. I'm still at a certain level in this, but that doesn't mean, things will always remain this way too. I stay optimistic, but I've been fair and just pacing myself throughout the years. But sometimes part of it is what you get in, what you put in terms of that movement of status correction. If you really want to get out, there's a saying that nothing in life comes easy. For the most part, you have to work hard. There can be, sometimes there are shortcuts. I acknowledge there are exceptions to every rule, but not necessarily for everybody. It's different strokes for different folks. A friend of mine years ago used to be a drug dealer, used to always tell me, he said being a drug dealer allowed him to be a smart businessman. He used to tell me this a lot before I kind of understood things, but he used to always say it's different strokes for different folks. So what may work for one may not work for another. However, at the same time, if you're hungry enough, by the way, I am aware of, you can, where there's a will, there's a way. And I've seen with my own eyes, even though I may not have experienced, achieved certain levels of success in my own regard. I've had, smaller types of successes. I think just like people there don't believe that people have made money actually off of cryptocurrencies, and it's not just Bitcoin. Was having a conversation with a neighbor last year, I would say it was, that we were discussing. He thought that no one had never made any money off of cryptocurrencies, and people don't understand. They always just associate all cryptocurrencies. That when they don't know anything about it, they just say that they're all Bitcoin. And the stupid thing is, know, there's thousands of cryptocurrencies out there, and there's people they just I don't know if it's from urban legends, but I have discussions with a friend of mine like this all the time. They just talk off the top of the head. They may be some of them are intelligent people, but don't just assume that you know everything. And I admit I don't know everything either. I've been referred to as like a human encyclopedia, but I said no, I don't want to be given that title because I literally do not know everything. I don't take credit to know everything, but I do research. And just using this analogy, and I was sharing with my neighbor that lived in my apartment building. He literally thought at one time, I said, no, I said, I've made money, but I didn't want to kind of, because when you do make it to a certain plateau, there's people that actually have videos on YouTube. Once you become rich or wealthy, you don't want to necessarily tell people or blab it out to the world. I am aware of that as well, because when I attended that private event that I refer to as a private clandestine operation, the private people there, the ones that had already made it to the other side, that's one of the things that they emphasize, and they speak in terms of being private, but just sharing for the sake of conversation. Because so many people, it's difficult for people to gauge whether or not something is real unless they've seen it for themselves. And I just told my neighbor simply, humbly, I said, I've made something. I'm not saying there's people I've seen that have made way far more than I have, like several hundred thousand. I told a friend of mine if I was in earlier, I could have done numbers like that easily, but I never had really no one in my corner. I do tell a story. I had one friend years ago, over a decade ago, but I didn't really stay in touch with him like that. He went in different directions, I would say, politically, even though I'm not a registered voter. We reconnected through Facebook. He used to train at the martial arts school that I used to attend years ago. By the way, he had actually left the school, had became a U.S. Marine. He had moved out to California, but he got indoctrinated with liberalism. He also eventually became a college professor. But he told me years ago, I think he went to this meeting or whatever he was excited about, told me he was going to update me since he was already in California. And that's a big hub, like just like Miami in certain places, financial centers. Because I've looked up where some of the elites' relatives live at years ago. I did my own research earlier on privately, and they live in places like New York, Miami, California, like extended members of, let's just say, significant families. I won't list the names, but earlier on, when Facebook first came around, before a lot of people started locking their accounts up, setting it to private, I was seeing how I was looking up people that I studied basically were part of the Illuminati bloodlines, dynasties, and things of that sort. And I drew the connection. So this friend, he was originally from Detroit, and he told me he would get back with me, but he never did at the time. But he said I asked him back then. I said I didn't know how to buy Bitcoin, and I could tell he was kind of holding back a little bit. But had I known about Coinbase or whatever years ago, at the time, but he knew, but he kind of held back from. But I know prior to that, we talked about, because he bought silver at the time. He knew about that as well, so I was pretty surprised because only a handful of people he was buying silver and stuff back then, and there was other things I won't really share that, because of course he was former military too. I almost joined different branches, but I never went in. But like I say, he went in to Marines, he served, he came out. But I think we kind of, as years progressed, came down the road, our friends, people kind of pull themselves apart. But I just started, I don't think it's a coincidence that he moved out to California, and he told me about this meeting years ago and some information he came across. That's the thing that kind of upset me in a way. But it's just the way life works. But how Bitcoin, how it was created, I learned some information from one of my sources that is believed to be, but I'm not going to probably go into details because I didn't want this video to be about that. It was supposed to be about how I was reflecting on 2025 last year. And I know I have a tendency, I can go off not only in the tangent, but I can go real deep. I can shift to different stories. For some people I know actually like that or want to know more. But I was just really surprised that this friend of mine, I said, man, I wonder what he would have shared if he had gotten back with me. And it was also on my part, I didn't reach back to him, but I said at the time, I told him about something that I had invested in and I had lost money from this. And he said, Dan, he said, you could have put that in Bitcoin. And then I had said the reason this was brought up in the conversation, I said to him at the time, I said, I wanted to buy Bitcoin. I heard about it even before 2017, before it, first hit the mainstream media as one of the major bull markets from 27, the end of 2017 going into 2018 or whatever. Then you've had some other ones like 2021, and then last year, of course. Well, not just last year, but 2024 and part of I think 2023 or towards the end. I start to lose track from some of the key dates when we've been in basically a bull market. And I took marketing in college, marketing and small business management. By the way, I used to work at the school, and I know the instructors. They taught both classes in that department. They actually talked about these types of subjects too, which you'll learn if you take economics. You'll learn different classes teach about, if you want to learn about stocks and things. And I didn't really understand back then. I'm still learning, by the way, but I get the concept because for a number of years, one thing that I have been doing is, and I'm finding out, there's actually a website that lists the top assets in the world. By the way, I was telling a friend of mine, he didn't even know about this. And I said, hey, he could kind of see where I was going because I told him a story how I got scammed recently. Yes, it could even happen to me as smart as a guy that I am. I got had, but I told him overall, some amazing things as reflecting in 2025. Last year, I broke some records just from my own personal records, you could say, but it would be significant as I documented my journey with dealing with precious metals and some things. And I told him, I asked him, I said, are you familiar with it? There's this particular website, people who are in your discipline, because he told me he went to some of Grant Cardone's seminars. I would have never known who Grant Cardone was unless he told me. He was trying to get me to come. I think his wife may have come to some of them, but he was telling me about them. And I wasn't necessarily, I've never kind of been a big fan of real estate. But I said people that are part of that discipline or that study finance, I said they're not just into that one thing. I said even the president himself with a mogul that is known for real estate or other people like Robert Kiyosaki, I said they don't put all their eggs in one basket. But I said, are you aware there's a site, a website? And I said, I learned this from people because some of them that buy stocks were into cryptocurrency. Some of the top guys like I follow, I haven't watched this channel in quite a while, but Asian guy named Brian Jung, who last what I know was lives in the DC area, that particular area, and he's very intelligent. And I've been subscribed to him for a number of years. But like I said, I haven't really looked at his videos in quite a while. But it's channels like his and others that teach about finance. He's taught about credit cards, stocks, cryptocurrencies, and this is where the world is headed, whether you like it or not. And I'll admit, I was not a big fan of cryptos and Bitcoin. I thought, in my opinion, this is all coming down to something more devious down the road. I think that certain powers that be, in my opinion, don't have our best interest at heart. I myself, by the way, for example, I told one guy I'm in touch with, I met him years ago. He used to come to the sovereign meetings that I used to attend. He's married, by the way. He lives out in Southfield. I won't say his name, but he calls me once in every blue moon and asks me my take, and has shared with me privately that his nephew, by the way, had made like several hundred thousands off cryptocurrency. But I think he said he blew through it, by the way. So I know I've had testimony people have actually made money off of it, because there's people out here that think it's all a scam. but they don't know. There's different types of things. I'm not saying you have to be careful of anything before you get involved with it, but you have to do your research, your due diligence, and do your homework. But people don't know individually, just like you can buy physical precious metals, you can physically buy gold and silver, not just jewelry. They have a version that's like a digital version or whatever, or they refer to as paper contracts if you know about the futures market. Now, I'm not an expert when it comes to the futures market or the COMEX exchange, but I've known for years. If you can, they have like even these apps now that allow you to buy like digital silver. I think Robinhood or something, the ticker symbol had something like that where you could buy whatever the price is at the time, but you would hold like a digital representation of it. And remember that platform actually has custody. And that's why when I attended an event, preppers event, my friend took me to some years ago, a lot of the guys there, mostly white guys, were saying, you need to hold the physical. This black guy his name was Andre, he was a firefighter, was giving a presentation at some library. And I told my friend, I said, he was, he knew about some things, but he knew that I was more knowledgeable when it came to precious metals. Because someone that he was friends with in the group was into buying gold and silver. And I said, see what they're saying? They're telling you to hold the physical. They're yelling it out when we were at the event. We were kind of sitting towards the back. I said, see, I kind of nudged his shoulder, said, see what they're talking about, man? So I'm glad we've kind of played chess throughout the years. There's a saying, sword sharpens sword. And I'm glad some of my close friends, my close confidants, have been open-minded to where we'll compare notes when it comes to history, different things. We get in debates, friendly discussions, but we also know how to, not get it to the point where there's some people that can't handle debates, but that's where you get to where, if you've heard the saying, sword sharpens sword, you scratch my back, I scratch your back, but people sometimes have to compete, but in a way, but can still remain pals and cordial about it. Those are some of the most mature types of relationships too. In order to develop self mastery, self actualization, of discipline, it's having the ability to be humble, and that's one of the things I've learned throughout the years. And I told my friend, we made a pact with each other. After we actually fell out 3 times with each other. These types of things that happen in life as you get older, you progress throughout the years, and then the last time we buried the hatchet, and we've been real cool ever since, and that comes from maturity. And I told him, I think that's an amazing story that can be told and shared with other people, because you have some people, they fall out with each other, they never talk again, or they hate each other, they despise each other. It got really bad between us, but we were able to look past our differences, and I learned a lot from him. I consider he's like my brother, my mentor, also my other Sifu, by the way, because he met my sensei. I had, at the time, out of respect for training under someone else when I was heavily into the arts and more consistent than I am now, since I'm a lot older. I went to my sensei, asked for permission, because there's kind of a saying about serving two masters, because my sensei actually eventually he moved out of state, hasn't been in the state for a number of years, so it's worked out because they balance each other out. We all know each other, and it's interesting. Something that he recommended as far as we men get older, and they're actually showing commercials about it. My sensei confirmed the same exact thing as he gave my other Sifu permission to train me. By the way, is they talked about Tai Chi, and I thought that was really interesting. That's synchronicity, things that come together. So, but last year was a very interesting, dynamic year for me. I'm excited about 2026, what this year has to bring. I got a chance before the year was out, not too long ago, towards it was back in December, so towards last month, by the way, a buddy of mine I hadn't talked to he reminded me we hadn't spoken since back just prior to the summer when I told that story about the infatuation I had. He actually reminded me. I said, "Dang, it had been that long since we talked." And this buddy of mine, who I keep private, has been out of the country. I was to say multiple times before, has passed me intel, and there's things before YouTube has really gotten as big as it's gotten, or social media in general. We were actually laughing about how there's this phenomenon called the passport bros. And he said he was coming back one time on a plane, and some guy said to him that you must be a passport bro. And he said, I was here before that was even thought about. And I started laughing. I said, yeah. I said, we've known people have turned this thing into like a whole movement or whatever. And I said, I won't say the person's name, but I've been in contact. I've been knowing this person for quite a while. We actually met at a job we used to work. We used to do security at Home Depot, literally over 20 years ago, by the way. And he shared some things with me that tied in with some intel that I had as far as going into this year. Some very powerful intel. We have these dynamic discussions, and this source of mine is I commend him greatly. Very intelligent, very knowledgeable. He served in one of the branches of the military. By the way, I won't say this is another separate friend. He had a high level secret security clearance. So stuff we talk about is credible. Whether people try to dismiss it as conspiracy theory, but a lot of people just don't do research, and we've been consistent at this for years. He's given me books to read. I've given him or shared some of the books I've had. We borrowed from each other throughout the years. So, and we're humble. Like, if we don't know something, we'll share. And he kind of helped me connect the dots about some things. But he told me some things that were expected to take place this year, and I'm gonna, keep my eyeglasses on, paying attention. But he talked about the reason why the U.S. is going after Venezuela, allegedly, that they know that they're going to need the oil for an upcoming war with Iran, which he believes. And he said that as a result of this war with Iran, they're going to lock down the Strait of Hormuz, which is significant with the supply chain. We're bringing in, I guess, we don't think a lot of things that we have, we take for granted here in America, even other parts of the world, they're shipped on boats, by the way, and which kind of brings the realization of this. I have a friend, he's married, his wife is from Africa. This is a separate friend, and they send stuff back home, and sometimes when they send stuff back, it has to be shipped by boat, by the way. And I thought that was very, very interesting to see how that plays out. But he thinks he's very adamant about maybe getting out the U.S. because he said things are going to get bad. So I hope it doesn't. But it seems like it ties in with those that know about Cliff High's WebBot report. When I was listening to information from Snippy's channel, known as JSnip4, who we followed for a while, who Currency 365 is familiar with, by the way. He says his woo-woo friend Richard, who was separate from Cliff High, but his friend Richard that he met down the road that taught him some of the practices of a shaman, and he has visions and stuff. He's also met Dick Alligar. He said his woo friend Richard said, I think sometime last year, I did hear him mention in one of the broadcasts that I could catch. I used to watch him more consistently, but it's so much information that I can't keep up sometimes. But he said his friend Richard mentioned, to make a long story short, he says we're close to that time period that where Cliff High talked about, I think, $600 silver. Richard also he said something to him that you're going to need at certain points you're going to need to shift between cash, cryptocurrencies, and precious metals. But he stated like you're going to need one or the other at certain points. So I thought that was very interesting intel. But he said last year we were close to that timeline. I believe I know when, as that indictment for that entertainment mogul was happening, I knew that was a major web-bot hit because Cliff High said years ago in his data sets, he didn't know, he said some type of entertainer or music mogul was going to get indicted. He said all this information was going to come out, and he said after this indictment was going to lead to some other problems, uh, and he went into details about the government. Because if you don't know, Cliff High used to work as a computer programmer for Microsoft. He developed this supercomputer that could predict future outcomes and things based off information. He explained how it worked. In some instances, it could generate clear things that were going to happen. In some instances, the reports or the data sets that will come out will be real vague, but he would let you know you got closer to the incident happening. There would be a temporal marker. He would mention it, and we've already crossed, I think, some instances of temporal markers that we're getting closer to some timelines or turmoil happening with the government tension being set. He even gave some predictions about Trump, and he said a while ago, he said his data set showed. I thought this was ironic that he said he would be in there for a very long time, but he said eventually something would happen. He didn't really. It seemed like he may have known, but he didn't really go into details about. But he said they're eventually going to get him out of there. Or something was going to happen, and he talked about military intervention, I think, and some other things. But a lot of those videos were lost because YouTube, because of the censorship, they got rid of Jay Smith's channel. I don't know if he archived those videos. I thought I heard him say recently he got his channel back. I don't know if that was his original channel. So I don't know if those videos were saved. I think he had a subscriber that saved some of the videos that Cliff High did. But I think if we could get those old Cliff High videos, they were really powerful and relevant. And now Cliff High, he has his own podcast or whatever that he's doing on, I forget the name of that platform. I think it's called Substack. You look up Cliff High, he does podcasts on Substack, but he doesn't really like to talk about the cryptocurrency because everybody was like into like the predictions about the cryptocurrencies and the precious metals. That's what I love mostly hearing. I'm not really into the UFO stuff that much. Not saying I haven't read books or things about that stuff, but I like to more so hear about the financial aspect. But I think he said he doesn't, at a certain point, he didn't like to talk about it years ago because he said it's also can be used similar to the movie Back to the Future. They can manipulate in real time the evil ones or the powers that be when definitive predictions are coming down even in real time. If you get the concept, if you watch all the Back to the Future movies with Michael J. Fox, then you would understand there's some truth to things that they were explaining in the movie, even though it's not been publicly released yet that we have the technology to travel back and forth in time. Now I have a friend that is a scientist, and he confirmed with me that time travel will be possible, even traveling to exoplanets. I found out, I told a friend of mine, I was watching a scientific channel I'm subscribed to called Insane Curiosity, which I love, been subscribed to for quite a while. I've learned tremendously a lot of information. And no, I'm not a flat earther. A lot of flat earth people don't even believe we left the planet. It's funny, I came across these people on Telegram. I was able to figure out their whole room. They were mostly predominantly flat earthers, by the way, which I'm not knocking because I asked a friend of mine, I said, why is the flat earth people, I said, why do they gravitate to me? Because I have this friend, he actually really is the human encyclopedia I've been compared to. But that's a whole nother story. My aunt bought me books years ago as a little boy. She said, you ask a lot of questions. She said, you're very inquisitive. So she bought me these books called the Tell Me Why books, by the way. I need to look up those books and see who they were created by now that I think about it, as I'm sharing it with you guys publicly here on this YouTube channel. But they were called the Tell Me Why books. And I told her years later, I said, I met the real life Tell Me Why person. My friend, he's humble about it, but he's exceptionally brilliant. I think he can speak multiple languages. But I told him, what I discovered, because I independently studied dating psychology on my own. I'm very cerebral, left brain person, even to the point it's at my detriment because I'm very analytical. And I told them what I've learned from years ago. I watched a seminar between uh, David D'Angelo and Dr. Paul, one of the most dynamic dating coaches seminars that I've watched. And Dr. Paul was a clinical psychologist. And he's had patients he charged as high as up to $60,000, and he did a joint seminar with David D'Angelo, and it was well worth the money. And it was called Inner Game, part of the whole series that David D'Angelo did. And he talked about how some guys, uh, they or some people, they use more of their right brain than their left brain. And I told a friend of mine, I said, you use more of your right brain. That's how you're able to speak more spontaneous. When people play the dozens or talk trash, you have quick comebacks. With me, I'm more analytical. It takes me time to process the information, so I don't come back as fast. But you have the balance or best of both worlds. And if you can, this is what Dr. Paul talked about. He said the key is you want to get right in the middle. He showed a chart, given his presentation. He gave visuals to all the students, the guys that came to the seminar live, and he drew and said, "You want to be right here in the middle. Is to try to work on." And he explained the difference between the so-called bad boy concept versus the nice guy. He said a lot of nice guys are very analytical. The bad boys are more jerks. Rude boys are more spontaneous. So they're right in the middle because they can think. They think on their feet. They do things more spontaneous. But he talked about the imbalance that they have in processing and making decisions. And he said the key is you want to be right in the middle. Where he drew this, had this chart, but it's very dynamic. That's kind of a short example of just independently the research that I've done on my own. That wasn't learned in any, even though I've been to college before high school, I studied all of that on my own years ago, by the way. So 2025 and reflecting back was another miraculous year for me. Before the end of last year, I reflect back to after I fully healed up from the back injury. It's funny is my other friend, his buddy is a trainer, a weight trainer, weightlifting trainer. He actually has two different certifications. He actually, big shout out to call him by a spiritual name, Abimelech. He actually gave me what do you call those? Got me what you I didn't know where you can hang up in your bedroom like a pull up bar. You know how they have those pull up bars that go on the wall. Well, I had to stop training for a while. I told them I had some dumbbells, and they kind of like they have dead weight to them where they, even though they say 35 pounds each, they feel like they're heavier than that. They just feel like solid dead weight. And one of the times I guess I wasn't picking them up carefully, and I partially injured my back, but I caught it in time, and it seemed like the sciatica mildly returned. And this was prior to the recent injury before the end of last year. And ironically, my job, they canceled my night shift, and they started having me help out working the schools, which I wasn't necessarily a big fan of, but covering different shifts because I was made to be a supervisor. And they said, my boss basically, she called me one day. She let me know in advance. She said they're going to be getting ready or canceling your weekend shift, which what I would do is like around this time at night, I would patrol businesses. I kind of like that shift. That shift went from 8 p.m. to 4 a.m., where I would patrol a certain area on the west side of the city. Then I would go to the east side and, open the gate up just to make sure because a lot of people were broke in this particular clinic. So she said the company, they were moving away from that. And plus, I could tell as going into the past couple of years, I had helped them out significantly, filling in different shifts, being like an unofficial floater, by the way, which I wasn't necessarily a big fan of. But at the end of the day, I live on my own. You got to make money. You got to put food on the table. I got to keep a roof over my head. So, it is for what it is. So when she told me towards not too long before the end of the year, there was another lady that I met who ended up becoming a supervisor. And the last running vehicle we had ended up breaking down on her. Then the other vehicle prior, they took it back to Ohio. And I said, why are they, taking it back? But she kind of explained. I have my theories as to why. By the way, but she said when they took it back to Ohio, then she said, oh, basically I had to start using my own vehicle because for a number of years when I worked a lot of these schools and I was covering different shifts, I didn't have to use my own personal vehicle. I was able to use the company vehicle. So being in Michigan has real cold weather. If you're not from here, it can get super cold and Arctic air. They mentioned it can come in, like especially after it snows, and it snowed recently. It was actually a bad storm, New Year's Eve. I happened to be out earlier in the day because I had to go to a physical therapy appointment. And just as I was leaving, it was snowing. I had went to grab something to eat, but I had to be very careful. Driving back home, it was a slow commute. Then later, to leave back out to work this night shift for New Year's Eve, get time and a half, it was already another set of snow. And by that time, it had finished snowing, but the temperatures dropped. So it's like that real nasty. After it snows, it gets cold quick and it froze on the car. So that kind of slowed down my commute. By the way, getting to work. But to make a long story short, you're probably wondering how did I injure my back again? And that leads me because since I was using my own vehicle, I decided to bring the same portable generator, aka EcoFlow power station that I had bought myself as a Christmas gift back in 2024. I bought it off eBay because it was like a deal you can't refuse. I told my buddy of mine, EcoFlow, they make portable power stations. They have a store on there actually. You don't have to necessarily buy it from their website. They've become very popular. They started off from crowdfunding. I had their EcoFlow Delta, one of their original Delta devices years ago before they upgraded to the lithium phosphate. I have one of the original EcoFlow Delta 1300, something like that, the lithium ion, but they've since upgraded to the lithium phosphate version, which lasts much longer. But just as a pre-warning, if you know anything about EcoFlow's devices, they're dead weight. So I thought it was super cold one day, and I didn't know, sitting in my car, I didn't want to keep my car running the whole shift. So I decided to bring the power station with me to work. And boy, was it a doozy, even just getting it down the steps in my apartment. I didn't even realize when I lifted it up and I was kind of straining with it, it over time, I realized it was the major culprit. It re-injured my back and brought the sciatica, but not, I would say, as severe as when I initially had the injury that I healed up from prior to the summer. I fully healed, but I see now I have to be more careful. When I was born, some older people guys told me years ago, they said you got to be careful with your back because I used to belong to this church and I helped quite a few people move, and they said, "Do you already having back problems?" But one thing you don't want to deal with is the physical therapist confirmed. He believes that nerve is tension, so I feel it in like my left leg, by the way. But that, I told him, is basically a result, and I believe I'm going to get better from this, but I'm going to have to be careful from lifting heavy stuff, doing physical work. I do have a work restriction letter from my doctor, by the way, but for the most part, in the type of field that I'm in, I don't have to do any heavy lifting. There was one particular school that I was sent to that I'm glad I don't have to basically be back over there being the principal at that particular school. I'll just say we exchanged some words. I'm not too fond of that site. It's interesting. Previous supervisors, someone I know, and I probably may give her a call sometime. I still have her contact information if it hasn't changed. She told me about a situation she got into with that same principal and someone else because he wants the guards at this particular school to put up like 18 18 cones in front. The school has two parking lots. It has like one on the side, and he expects you to memorize and know exactly how the layout works. And there's one guy we've had who's been over there for years, and they had me fill in for him. I guess on they say on his Wednesdays is like his sick day or a doctor's appointment where he needs a day off. So I said okay, because my other coworker, Denise, she didn't want to. Basically, she said she had to pick her son up. She called me one time just prior because I was actually at a different school, was actually paying more money, and I didn't even realize that this school paid a little bit cheaper. That's how some of the accounts are set. And I said, I said no problem. Because I said I don't want to, see you have to go because she was, I thought maybe quitting or getting ready to quit. And basically, I said I'll fill in. So she told our office manager, Rebecca, that Rebecca asked me, and I said I'll go over there again. But it had been a while since I was filling in over there consistently. But like I said, at that particular school, what happened this particular day, though, I actually went to the main office and I did this previous week. I said, how do you guys want this set up? And they had said, oh, you've been over here a real long time. You ought to know by now. I'm like, why are you guys making a big deal out of it? They don't treat me this way at none of the other schools that I go to. They actually thanked me when I was working at school. The principal on the west side, I say at a particular school, she thanked me just for, when I put the cones up, put the structure. But this other place, the guy, he was basically just acting like an asshole. And I was like, forget it. So I just waited till dismissal. He comes like, oh, why didn't you put the cones up? Or whatever. I was like, I came to the office earlier to ask you. It's like I waited for instructions and I'm coming to you humbly and you acting like an asshole about it. So I'm just glad I don't look forward to being there anymore. I said, good riddance, good luck with that location. But like I said, my other coworker, they treat him like he's the guy because I asked for a key card over there some years ago. I said, I'm a supervisor. I said, I keep up with the equipment and stuff. And they say, well, they don't just give those out to anybody. So there's some funny, weird stuff going on over at that school. I don't know if they're Masons, part of a secret society, or what. But everybody, my other supervisor, she said she had got into it with the guy over there. I said, this is ridiculous. I said, so he was like, oh, they got to do something about this. I'm just glad, good riddance with that place. I won't probably be ever going to that school again. Like I said, originally, I didn't mind. I had a supervisor who used to work here. She used to call me frantically when I was doing my night shift because they were having trouble finding coverage, people to help, because there's major staffing shortages, if you don't know, in the security industry. And she's like, Dorsey, can you help? Her name was Lashana Clayton. Shana would call her. I said, dang, she kind of getting on my case like she was my mother. She technically was my supervisor. She knew she was the role supervisor, but it was still certain things she didn't know because I had to tell my operations manager. She wasn't calling like the names. They were familiar. Everybody that's pretty much worked knows that the assigned company vehicles we had, they give it a name like the vehicle Unit 300 or, this, that, and the other. And I said, we would kind of clash sometimes. And I'd be like, I'm trying to work with her, like, which vehicle you're referring to? Because you're my superior, you're supposed to know this with the vehicle. He's like, he tells me probably she don't really know, I guess, what the vehicle number was. But bless her heart, I didn't mind trying to make the extra money at the time. And I guess Rebecca saw that, like I was, filling in for a lot of people. So they kind of made me like an unofficial floater. And I said, I go on Indeed's website, and they do list for different security companies. They list positions for people as flex officers. And I said, because I had a lady that I trained, and she asked me, she said, I don't want to be used as a flex officer. It's hard, very hard. And I would say it's practically non-existent. But I'm pretty much, like I said, I've been here for quite a while, but that's the story behind how I was unofficially forced to work the schools, which I wasn't necessarily never a fan of, because for a lot of years, I refused to do it, even when my supervisor, Steve Jordan, was here. And Steve was like, Dorsey was like, can we get you to come in? I was like, Steve, I don't work for the schools. What they knew what they were doing. They took away the site that I had on the west side, but I was kind of getting tired of that site because I was on the graveyard shift for a number of years. So the good news, if you look at things once again as a blessing in disguise, being on a morning shift has allowed me to get my circadian rhythm back. By the way, even though I'm doing a night shift right now, I'm actually at a pretty quiet site location. So like I say, I'm not complaining, but the morning shift, the school shift, has enabled me to get my circadian rhythm. My friend had got me one of those what do you call those fitness watches. My friend I was just mentioning is really brilliant, amazing, and I was able to bring. I told him my HRV to the fitness watch. It gives you, your heartbeat per minute. You're getting enough sleep. Other things it can track. He was telling me something. Technology, these things are amazing. So I told him since my night shift was canceled, the blessing in disguise getting back on the school shift was I've been able to get my circadian rhythm back because for a lot of years I've been doing this night shift consistently, and it takes a toll on your body. Some of my relatives, people told me that's not healthy for you. Of course, I know, and I did some things. Basically, I got so used to it, I was able to alter my body chemistry to be able to do this type of work and get consistent. Because every now and then when I go on Indeed's job site, where to look up different jobs, and I see different companies and requests and what type of officers or what they're looking for. They have trouble finding people to work third shifts too. And just imagine if they're struggling to find nurses, even similar to the medical field, mechanics, nurses, doctors, security guards. I hear a lot of the schools. There's just simply not enough help. But I knew years ago, one of my teachers, when I was way back in middle school, he said they already knew back then a lot of the baby boomers were retiring, and the children hadn't had enough children like our parents' generation. They were having 8 and 10 kids to get raised to grow up on the farm. And then the newer generations are not having as many children. You're going to need people to take care of them when they get older. By the way, it's why I say one of the keys. I'm not against, even though I don't have any children myself. I would have liked to, and I don't knock, baby mothers. There's people that make content, dating videos and stuff. Then you got women out here that say they push content that they're celibate, but eventually you're all going to get old one day. You're going to need people to take care of you. And I've heard there's other countries like France or whatever where the population has gotten really old, and it's a major strain. And I see the reports on the news across the country, even with people that have special needs that are like paraplegic or quadriplegic finding nurses. And one guy, I think he was in the D.C. area, he was complaining about the nurses they work out of his home because he has special needs. I think paraplegic, and he says they sleep on their shifts, but he has to keep a dim light in his house. And how do you expect somebody to stay awake all night when they keeping a dim light and to tend to your needs? And he says, I saw a story, and I said, basically, I was like, good luck finding people, but that's why in this type of field, there's major shortages. So down the road, it's only going to probably exacerbate or get worse. You don't have enough children to replace the adult population. Because once again, the baby boomers, they were having more children during that particular type of generation. And I know when you go way back, that's why a lot of older people that I talk to, they have a lot of brothers and sisters. But as time went on, the cost of living changed. Women were only having maybe 3 or 4 children at the most. And C-sections have become more prevalent because people just simply can't afford it based on the cost of living and those factors. But at the same time, I think having children is a vital part of to maintain a population, to have a thriving, growing Testing, testing, one, two, testing. Sorry, you guys lost me there. I'm back. Okay, I'm gonna read the comment section. I see we got some comments in here. Says show on stage at DB says Happy New Year to you as well. DB, appreciate you. Let's see. We have in the chat Tanya Reynolds says Happy New Year to you as well, Tanya. Appreciate you joining. Uh, so Mary Saunders says Happy New Year, Mr. Dorsey. Appreciate you, Mary. By the way, uh, let's read this comment. Tanya says, where do you get the international bond paper for trust documents? If I worded it correctly. I'm sorry, I didn't know if you were still watching, Tanya. Let me know if you guys can hear me. I made a mistake not too long ago. I hit the button because I was talking on my phone. I made a mistake and hit the X out button where it didn't end the live, but it X'd me out, so I had to go back on my phone. But that's a good question, by the way. If you're still listening, I would have to ask my source because a while ago he had to order it, but my friend, because we're working with someone behind the scenes, a good friend of mine who I keep private. He's somebody actually I know who's made it all the way to the other side, and he said he discovered it as he talked with one of the leaders and captains in my small group that I'm part of that I studied with, that it was required. And I said it appears as though we had to find a website, but a buddy of mine, I don't know how he discovered, but he said it had to go by international standards. I kind of didn't go into details as far as what type of trust, but you can say it's along the lines of basically foreign but legitimate. There's things that makes it, that gives it legitimacy as well. There's a way to do that, but there's some things I can't. I'm not at liberty to go into details about. If you are still watching, let me know. By the way, let's read this comment. Mary says, I was given a XRP coin over 5 years ago as a good luck coin. Okay, interesting. When you say XRP coin, are you talking about a physical coin, Mary, or were you given, or did somebody send you like the XRP through Coinbase? I am also aware, too, of those that mention about having a cold storage wallet. I forget the name sometimes because when you have cryptocurrency on these public exchanges, it's been said, I don't know when, but anytime you don't necessarily have custody, just like even at these public banks, unless you have your status changed or you have a certain type of account set up, that those entities actually, they have power of attorney, they have whole custody over your funds. So I am aware that people that have shared, you want to move them to a cold storage wallet. But I'm not giving any type of advice. I say what was shared with me privately, research on your own. And even though I personally did get one, but I did not do some of these things yet. I will admit. Actually, back in August of last year, before the end of August, I believe I traced it back to. I didn't tell you guys publicly. I kind of kept it secret. But I shared it with a buddy of mine, the guy that I mentioned. He's married. He calls me every now and then. The one that told me his nephew made like several $100,000. I sold all the other cryptos that I had. The only ones I have left was basically a Dogecoin, Elon. They call it the Elon token on my Exodus wallet, but I could only access it on my laptop because my main desktop computer was using Windows 7 and it was outdated. What I hate, they stopped supporting devices, which pisses me off. They have the technology where they can still support the device, but they do this bull excuse my French, this bullshit to make you upgrade. That's one of the dirty things I don't like about crypto's technology, these big tech giants, big tech dummies. I think if the Trump administration could do, if I was to give advice, one thing I don't like about liberalism, is with them anything goes, and I believe there needs to be some type of structure that even though we are moving to a digital system, I think they need to pass a law. Republicans should work on this to make tech companies be more transparent and make things user friendly. This comes all the way to your cable service from Comcast, Xfinity, AT&T, T-Mobile. They need to make all devices from now here on out, all electronic devices, to where certain apps are things that people need to depend on, banking, finance. They need to make them user friendly and compatible with older devices so that people can still access them. This is one way that I'm proving these corporations are evil. This is another way they're cutting you off, because before I sold all my cryptos back in August, I had got a notification. There was one coin I was holding in my Exodus wallet called on Ontology, and I hadn't really logged in. Just like I don't log in on I log out of my social media accounts. Like I haven't logged into my Twitter account in a while, or my Instagram. I'm basically not on there that much, or as much as I used to. But similarly, this is before I decided to get rid of everything, because I was kind of tipped off. One channel, crypto channel I was subscribed to. I can't think of the name offhand. A big shout out to the guy. He mentioned in his video, he said to all his subscribers, he's kind of like a white hat or like a Robin Hood type guy. This morning, he said, I don't think you're going to see these prices again, even though we're still under the impression we're in the bull market. We haven't seen this next leg up. At the time, this is before a big crash, and I was constantly seeing the prices seem like they were going down more steadily. Like, even though people are saying that they're going to explode, and I said I saw the same thing happen before, by the way. So I decided to get rid of everything. For what I had bought in at, compared to when I had sold back in November, I still pulled down about 10 racks. Compared to last November, I pulled maybe 12 to 14, so somewhere between 22 to 24K, I was able to make just off of cryptos. But like I said, if I was in this longer and earlier on, if I could just go back in time, I promise you, I would have several hundred thousand, or I would be a millionaire status. I told a friend of mine that I'm only a couple to a few years off. I would have had at least several hundred thousand. I would have been able to quit my job. I would have been able to study status correction, have my status changed full time. One of the secrets I know, I would have already been able to have the money to purchase my trust by other people out there that know how to do it professionally. Big shout out to the elder that helped me, because he understands our situation that we're in. But we wouldn't have been waiting all these years for this bullshit ass reset for the dinars to come through. We would have, like I said years ago, when the funds should have just paid out when it should have. I wish I knew who the idiot was behind the scenes that's holding this up. I remember speaking with the banker, told me some years ago that it was being held up by the Treasury. I don't know what's holding it up now, or what's taking so freaking long. But as I said, had that happened when it was supposed to, or if the Pastor Tony King seminars, Kingship Manna Coalition, or they had just it paid out like it should have, or if my black card got funded, which was separate from my DTC account getting funded, then I wouldn't have had to go through all this BS later. And I was able to see this crap years ago. So that's why I consider the banking system very, very wicked. It needs a massive overhaul. I think something definitely needs to be done, but I don't like the user friendliness of these corporations. The reason I put them down and I talk major smack, because we have to depend on these things, part of the system, by the way, and they need to make these devices, they need to make these websites, and I explain to them, and I've cussed them out in real time. Even insurance companies for car insurance, by the way. And oh, that's another thing was reminding me of and telling my story. Uh, but I appreciate you guys, by the way, joining those that still rock with me, that are still up real late, hearing me, speak. I know it's been a minute since I've gone live, but you guys just reminded me that's another amazing thing that happened to me last year. Amazing testimony. Like I said, 2025 is another miraculous, amazing year. So even though I got pulled over by the police, and I hadn't got pulled over in a while, because I found out too that girl had re-registered me to vote at the Secretary of State. I had no knowledge of it, but then I discovered it on my own later in the year. Nobody tipped me off. I got an inclination. I know what it was because I got something that came in the mail telling me about where my precinct was, and that's what tipped me off. And I said, and I had to think back. I said, that's when I moved to the other apartment, and I changed the address. So I learned something too about the do not detain list as well. Very interesting, because prior to that, I hadn't gotten pulled over in years, and I said, I wonder, because I told her sister, I said, I'm not on the do not detain list anymore, but I didn't understand. And I said, just that thing. But the amazing thing that came out of that situation, and I will admit at the time when I was pulled over, it's funny, I work in security guard, which is a lower level of law enforcement, but it's the reason I never became a police officer. I've had people that ask me, do I work for ICE? Or no, I do not work. I never have. I thought about seeing those commercials, though. They're paying some good money, by the way. So don't let the smooth taste fool you. I have been tempted because this other stuff hasn't come through. And see, that's what the evil ones at the top want. Is they stall this other stuff that happened. These idiots that I don't know. Like I said, what's going on with the reset? I know I can kind of be all over the place. I'm ranting a little bit, but I do believe the dinars are real. Like I said, I've told enough stories about that in the past. For those that don't believe me, just don't believe me. It is for what it is. But I've mentioned so much evidence behind that. I even forgot there's a story that a good friend of mine told, that there's a famous person, everybody would know who this person was. He went on CNN some years ago, and he mentioned he held Iraqi dinar. My source told me he saw the video on YouTube. When I tried to find the video some years ago, it appears it's been removed. Like I said, everybody would know who the individual was if I said the name, but he was doing an interview with Larry King some years ago. And what I understand, I tried to scour the internet. I could not find where the video was at, because I would have downloaded it years ago, because I've had the ability for years. I've known how to download YouTube videos. I've known how to do that for years. I got really good at that from something else that kind of happened. By the way, from getting better at downloading. But back to reflecting on last year, as we're in 2026 now. Yes, amazing thing that happened was after I got pulled over by the police. I did have a couple of court dates. They were spread apart. By the way, so I think my first court date was in March of last year. I got pulled over in February, and I was told by my buddy of mine who's out of state, who was also fraternal order of police, told me, the officer, he said, didn't have no choice, because I was actually sitting at a light. And I said I wasn't actually speeding, I wasn't doing anything, but he saw my plates, they were expired. So they were like, I will admit, I was driving with expired plates with no insurance for like two years. And, that's a no-no, by the way, especially those that teach, about the sovereign movement. I did try to attempt to get the black plates. By the way, I'm gonna have to maybe cancel the previous ones I did. I didn't do that process correctly. I had to go back to the lab. But the blessing that came out of the whole situation, so I had to get what they call real insurance to get back legitimate, which was expensive for no fault, because what they do is when you haven't had car insurance in a while, they punish you. So they punish you by making your rates higher. So I was paying over when I had to get this insurance, ended up going through Huntington, a bank called National General Insurance, and they were expensive. I remember when Huntington quoted, said they told me some years ago. They said we do car insurance as well, and I compared it even years ago to other companies like Progressive, and they were high. But Progressive is actually going up on their prices. Progressive used to have competitive rates, but because so many people over time, people have gotten in, and when people get in accidents and stuff like that, too, that causes the bonds that they're pulling from, that they pull when it's called insurance, that's in the jurisdiction, and they're using everybody's social security numbers, and they're pulling you, they're part of that bond. When somebody files a claim, who else does that spread? It spreads out. Like, give you a better example. When I used to live in my previous apartment, it became mandatory. We used to have renters insurance. Some of the I mentioned people there, residents had house fires, and what they started doing because some of the residents they discovered weren't keeping up with the insurance. Just not too long after I first moved in, maybe up to a few years after, they started really cracking down on it. When one of my property managers, she came, people would get it, and they stopped paying it. And they, at a certain point, they made you have to show proof, or they would check every so many months. Because what happened is the people that had to work on their property, they started going up on their rates because of the cost, and then over time the cost of living goes up too. So this kind of has a similar effect. Because Progressive, they told me when I spoke to one of the agents some years ago that something that happened had a big, large claim that they filed like $1 million or some type of collision. So everybody, especially if you're in the jurisdiction, you're on the statutory side. They're pulling those bonds together. It's all part of that public trust, by the way, which they're benefiting from because they have power of attorney over you. That's why Tamika with Path to Freedom, big shout out to me saying get rid of the POA. I have to look into that part. It's very important. Get rid of the POA that they have. POA, power of attorney, and I heard that years ago. By the way. So, but the blessing that came out of it, as my policy was getting ready to end with National General Insurance, which I was paying like $330, and I was so frustrated with them. That's the one I was telling. So I was actually cussing them out, and I was saying, well, based on the new law, you all are discriminating because Michigan had passed a new law. You're not supposed to discriminate according to people's zip code, their credit score. And I said, you guys are still doing this. And then the reps they would agree with me and whatever. And I said, why? I said, I've never been in a car accident before. And I said, even though I didn't have insurance, I admit, when you go without over 30 days, they punish you and said, because of this law or whatever, they jack your rate up. And I didn't even have full coverage. I had a buddy of mine stayed out in the suburbs. He was, at one time, he was only paying $100 a month, or less than $100, and he had full coverage for his vehicle. And I said, this is ridiculous. So, make a long story short, so I went, and even with my job throughout up until about 1 month, just a month prior to my the last month it was going to be due, I think it was July, something like that, or August. My policy was set in, but anyways, I always see those commercials that you see all the time. I know you guys have seen it, where they say, "Do this to lower your car insurance," blah blah blah. And I actually went through that. I tried it out, and that's the advice I meant to give to a relative, someone, because I had a couple people I told that asked me, because what I'm paying now is so ridiculously low. Not only low compared to what I was paying prior, but there's also, and I kind of figured this out. There's also another secret I discovered, but not only was what I'm paying is significantly lower, but I talked to everybody else. My policy lasts for like a whole year, by the way. And out of all the years that I've had car insurance, I've never had that happen. I'm still in the jurisdiction. Well, it's still in the system. I haven't got the black plates yet. Know about the DOT plates. I haven't done that process. But the blessing that came out of this, so out of all the years, remember the first time that I drove, and I told some people, one of them was my relative, and the other person, and they all wanted to. They were like, "Dang, how did you get it that low?" But the lady they called me after I had went through the website, and I got a call from a company I had never heard of. And I guess when they changed this law in Michigan, it allowed other companies to come in because the big insurance agency that has like the monopoly over the state or whatever. One guy told me some years ago my renter's insurance, he said was so high. He said it's actually the price equivalent of homeowners insurance. He was actually an agent. He advised me. He said you should complain to the bureau at the state of Michigan, which who feels like going through all that, type of stuff. But it was still good info. That was some years ago. So the blessing, I'm not gonna say the name because I didn't want. I even when I even told a couple people, but I said there's some qualifications you have to have too. It's similar to this company called Meaning. I heard, but not quite. Has some similarities. That's the only hint I'll give. That's not the company I went to, but they're so much cheaper. And then when I bundled my renter's insurance, I was able to actually get rid of. I had to get mandatory renter's insurance, and what I was paying for my renter's insurance separate from my rent was $25 extra on top of my rent price. So they said once you send us proof, once I contacted the property management, I sent them evidence of it. It actually lowered my monthly rent rate by $25 and made my rent much cheaper than what it was before. So I got my renter's insurance and the renter's insurance policy that I have with the newer company. It's better, has better coverage than even the company that I was forced to go with the property that I pay rent to. So it's a blessing that all came out of this. Interesting how God works in mysterious ways. But that was as a result. The girl who re-registered me to vote, which I didn't know, I got pulled over by the police. So I went through one of those experiences like Joseph in the Bible. And then I was humbled and I went through a situation where I hurt my back early in the year, even though I re-injured it twice before the beginning of last year. It does appear, I told the physical therapist, it does appear to be getting better, but I know I got to just stay off like lifting heavy stuff because I got to definitely be careful if I'm handling my portable power station or any type of, things that have weight to them. I have to be careful. But other than that, it's amazing because my car insurance policy, I told a couple of people, some other people, I said it lasts the whole year. It's not just a 6-month policy. It's a yearly policy. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I said, what? And for the first time in a long time, because they can see in their system, because when you're in a jurisdiction still to a degree, I actually got in the mail, I can do the registration and stuff online. Now, they don't give you that option. They can see, there's ways they can tell when you're not legit. Because they also have cameras and stuff throughout the city. I think that reads your plates because there's some other things I can tell that they're doing. Because all this new technology is all going to be part of this whole new social credit system too. So that's another reason I got to work on some things. But yeah, amazingly, everybody that I talked to said, no, you have to have a 6-month policy. So this is almost like I've only seen yearly policies with the company that I work for because I've done mobile patrol in their vehicles, and I've seen yearly like 1-year policies, and that was under commercial insurance. So as a resident, what would it be classified as a considered individual or residential car insurance owner compared to commercial? My policy it started from last summer. It's supposed to end next summer for a whole year. So Because everybody else I talked to, they said, "Oh, it's only supposed to be 6 months," and this is for it's actually for no fault. By the way, it's not full coverage, but it's no fault. But it lasts the whole year. By the way, so when I got a letter, it feels good that I was able to lower my rate significantly from the 330 something I was paying a month to what I'm paying now is far less than 100 a month. And I'm also in the area of the city, yes, considered a high risk zip code because from where I moved at, my previous apartment, I was closer, actually closer to Southfield Oak Park. So, because even my sister had mentioned some years ago she wanted to use my address, but they've been cracking down on that. Too, the word I got is that the insurance companies they don't allow PO boxes anymore, or they. One guy I worked with was telling me a story that so many they see or check this system that so many people are using one particular address, something, but they're cracking down because even my sister is funny. My younger sister wanted to use, I think, some years ago when she asked me because I was closer to 8 Mile where I used to stay, but now even though I'm still on the west side of the city, I'm deeper in the city, but my car insurance is significantly cheaper, and I didn't go through Cure. I, that was one of my other options that I had at the time before I was forced. Because I had to hurry up after when that situation I got pulled over. So I thought at the time the officer was going to throw the ticket out. Eventually, after I completed, went through court and everything, the judge she dismissed the case uh, and everything. So everything went good with that. So last year, and that was my first time having a court date through Zoom, by the way. Ever since they do all this new stuff with the pandemic and whatnot. So I experienced that, all that for the first time. So going into the summer, blessing out of it, got a yearly policy, so amazing. And then the other situation, as I told you guys the story, when I fell in love with a young lady, or I more so call it an infatuation, the blessing that came out of it in disguise from that was I discovered a site where I could download ebooks for free. I went on a self healing journey independently. I also it led me to these particular dating sites that I've been vague about. I haven't really gone into details specifically. I keep that part discreet, but it just confirmed some things to me through a lot of years. Something that I kind of didn't know. I guess I have a strong face card. I'm very attracted to certain types of ladies, by the way, quite a bit. Even though I'm not tall, and I wasn't trying to put myself down, but I was just being honest with myself. Because I studied dating psychology very in depth, very heavily. I read a lot of books years ago. I had DVDs and stuff. Even though it's been years, I'm breastfeeding. I'm naturally a shy person, mild mannered, tempered. Uh, at times I can be more extrovert around close friends and family that I know. But I do have a mild mannered side to me. I'm very analytical. But I'm just being honest. But I didn't realize that three of the dating sites I deactivated. By the way, so I felt like I know what it's like to get unwanted attention, and I literally know what it's like to be a very attractive, pretty woman. I understand what they go through, by the way, and I made some changes recently. But I think some of the women that were messaging me on one site, I had to explain to them. I said, "Do you know how many women that are messaging me before I joined this particular site? I already had over 5,000 messages combined. That was before I deactivated those three other sites that I was on. One in particular was I was getting a lot of visitors once I figured out how to track the amount of inboxes that I was getting, get an estimate looking at the visitor count. And even though I had set preferences, I was so attractive they were bypassing the preferences. So I was attracting them from all different ages because I didn't lie about my age. I had put my real age. One of the sites recently I did change the age, but it didn't allow me to change it back because of the cruise, they said. But I did that to keep from drawing unwanted attention because I'm not into uh, old women. By the way, I guess that's the thing. I was telling a buddy of mine specifically. I said I don't mean no harm, no offense, but that's just not. Don't they have separate sites for that? But I said, isn't that a mental disorder? I said you need to be very concerned. Most men that I know of, unless they got to be ugly or something, going after women in their 60s or 70s, even 50s. I mean, um, and I'll say black women, they don't age the same as white women. By the way, white women, I say, not trying to be offensive, but they age different. By the way, but I've have put disclaimers up, but even still, I get messages. But I still have to tell a buddy of mine, I still get a large portion of women of other ethnic backgrounds and very young women, believe it or not. But I do set parameters, and I am mature about it. By the way, but I was just surprised. I didn't realize that I was. I guess uh, it's been confirmation to me that I'm this handsome, and something I knew when I heard about. I told a buddy of mine he didn't know about it. The boxer that fought Jake Paul beat him in a match. Anthony Joshua. He has the full package. He's tall. Has the they call it the face card. So I guess I may not be tall, but I have the face card that comes with it. By the way, that's very powerful. And I even discovered these other unique channels that help me get through my own personal journey of self mastery, healing, self actualization. By the way, that were uniquely designed for the experiences that I had. It's amazing how God works in mysterious ways. This one particular guy's channel, I said I might message him down the road, where it's built towards explaining how women treat very handsome men versus men that are not as attractive. And he mentions himself, the guy that has the channel. He says he's naturally tall. Uh, he may not have the face card, but he has the height to make up. But he says another thing that can help you out is your body game. You lift weights, you bulk up as well, and then a combination of those things, can help out. On top of that, even to add, I say the reason Kevin Hart, I told a buddy of mine in short, he has a very attractive wife. I said not only does he have a sense of humor, his personality can make people laugh, hilarious person, but he also has the fame. You have to separate. That's part of status. I learned this from reading Tariq Nasheed's book some years ago, by the way. That's a whole different category. When somebody is naturally famous or has money, that's a status that comes with it as well. So this is something to keep in mind. But there are exceptions to every rule. Some women will try to make you feel better, like, oh, you're not short. Or well, Kevin Hart, he's a famous guy. He's with an attractive woman, But really, anytime you have a famous person, it's gonna be easier for them. But I learned the cheat code, by the way, and there's some other secrets. I can actually prove it. What I'm actually saying. My buddy, I said I've archived some of the messages. I said he would be blown away what I figured out on my own, but it's all because of the situation. Uh, Reflecting back, 2025 was another miraculous year because of that infatuation that I had that led from one thing to another. By the way, so that's it. Let me see. I'm gonna read the rest of the comments and I'm gonna get out of here. I've been on here about just over an hour. Wow, almost 2 hours. So, and I got about that time left before I get off. Read this comment. So Nario, am I pronouncing this correctly? Sonia Arel says, "Wow, Happy New Year! It's great to hear from you again. Appreciate you. Appreciate you joining in." Sonia says, "Sorry to hear about your back injury, Dorsey. Praying for a full recovery for you this year." Oh, appreciate you. Thank you, Sonia. Appreciate that encouragement. Uh, Sonia says, "Yes, I'm still watching." Okay, appreciate you. That was a while ago. Mary says, "I'm still here. Appreciate you all." Well, I said a mouthful. Just wanted to do this was an impromptu video. Wishing you guys a happy New Year. Let you know. I know you all have probably been wondering why you haven't heard from me in a while. So I did have a subscriber that reached out to me, texted me, was like, "What's going on lately?" Another thing I was going to say, I don't really like to talk about the reset information, even though I did kind of rant somewhat or give my opinion about the dinars or Vietnamese dong. Where that said, I still believe those things are going to eventually happen whenever it does take place. But there are bad actors out there. Uh, there's people that are trying to sabotage that from taking place too. By the way, there's some information I gained from one of my sources. I'm not going to dare go into details about or discuss, but there's someone updates that are given from another angle, another perspective from some people that are in the know. But because I won't kind of go into that, but it has to do. People will be really surprised as far as who's our ally in this, because and I've said this before. Dick Fleming said this from his research. As long as Democrats were in office, he said when Biden got in office, he said you won't see the reset happen. He said that adamant. So I'll just say you'll be surprised who has your back, who's your ally. Because overall, Obama did some things, even though I don't, particularly as a black man, don't want to seem like I'm hating on a brother, but there's some things that the Democrats did that doesn't get acknowledged. I know Republicans get blamed for a lot, but you have to. The mainstream media always makes it like the Republicans are the ones that's completely evil, that Democrats can do no wrong, they're guardian angels. They don't mention about the very devious stuff that Democrats have done. And Democrats were heavily, even before this Charlie Kirk situation happened, with Republicans, were kind of contradictory, double standard. But Democrats are heavily censoring too. And I talked about this. And even with this channel, the only reason I can still do videos on the StreamYard is because this channel was separate from my other channel, Dorsey's Resource Channel 2, that got removed. So this is actually the original channel was larger. I did more videos, but it was interesting. The only reason I discovered StreamYard ended up getting bought out. I just discovered by some other company. I got a message when I had some issues a little bit logging in, but that's the only reason. This was my larger channel where I had got up to over 8,000 subscribers. But my newer channel, if you want to check me out and subscribe to, I put in the description. And I haven't done videos, but I always tell you guys just be on standby. You never know when I may be over there. And, it's at Dorsey's Resource 873. And I have done some videos over there already. Well, everything I talked about in the past, I did that to document. So in case you guys are wondering, those experiences that actually happened, I still back those experiences. It is in the past, but I put it out there publicly. But like I said, to reiterate, I want to document what happened, but those are real experiences. Like I tell a buddy of mine, I said, I'm not making this stuff up. This may seem surreal to you because I'm somebody that you know personally. Even when I tell them about the sovereign movement, he calls these people in the ruling class elite, aka the Illuminati, he refers to them as the shadow people. I tell you, buddy, I'm not making this up. So that stuff I talked about, there's a lot of accuracy in those videos. You can go back. As I took you on this journey, I was transparent with you guys as I've been on this journey. And, it is for what it is, but I wasn't backing down. And I stick to it. I've gotten a lot older now. I've mellowed out, but I'm just giving you guys my opinion about what is taking place. These people don't have our best interest at heart. However, I don't know why, for the life of me, why it's being held up, but it does appear things are moving in a more positive direction, I would say, this year. But I don't give any timelines because I know they said years ago they didn't even want people to know the specific timelines of when this would occur, even though it's supposedly almost occurred in many occasions, but it was held back at the last minute for all different types of reasons. And remember, as I said in one of my previous videos, the elites are very wealthy. They don't want people becoming rich, by the way. As a friend of mine learned some years ago with the Robinhood, that app, you remember you guys with that scandal that took place, many people wanted to boycott Robinhood after they made people sell that GameStop stock that went up. It was what I call a short squeeze or something at the time. There was one subscriber wanted me to explain that, but I'm not a financial expert. I didn't gear this channel towards that, even though I talked about things related to that. But I'm not an expert when it comes to economist type discussions, financial discussions. I have to brush up on my financial literacy and overall of knowledge of holding assets or maybe day trading stuff like that. I still don't know how to day trade. Doesn't mean I haven't looked at channels that focus on that. But when that incident happened with those that are familiar with Robinhood, when GameStop, the video game store, that stock was going up and they forced people to sell at the time, a close buddy of mine told me that was confirmation to him that they didn't want poor people becoming wealthy. They wanted to keep people stagnant, keep you in the place that you're in, the condition that you're in, and suffering. And that's why I was very upset when I attended that private clandestine operation some years ago. I did get word what people were saying about me. They were like, oh, you took it personal. You need to let it go. They said, Dorsey, that happened in the past. I said, no, I'm never going to forget that. I'm going to hold them down because you lied to all these people and you promised. You gave an ironclad guarantee that this was going to happen. Even if it does eventually happen, I'm not going to be necessarily happy or excited. Yes, you can say I'm more mature, I'm humble, but that's going to be something I felt like we didn't, it was just, I know it seems redundant for me to talk about this, but it's something I felt this shouldn't have never taken place. It shouldn't have never taken this long to happen. And then there's some other things we're facing, but there are also some very evil cabal people, by the way. And I'm going to say this because I've been talking for about, we're going on almost 2 hours now. There's people, and I've said this in the past, that are in the circles of the ruling class elite, the upper echelons. Some know them, some of them as Zionists, by the way. Many of them, they've been involved in population reduction. Super wealthy individuals that are planning out, especially those that are connected to the World Economic Forum. Klaus Schwab, Yuval Noah Harari, Larry Fink from BlackRock, George Soros passed things down to his son Alexander Soros, by the way, Open Society Foundation. Bill Gates, William Gates, by the way, Warren Buffett, some of the Rothschilds, Jean-Claude Juncker, by the way, which I found out some of the European elites are private board members of the Federal Reserve Bank. The Federal Reserve Bank has been a problem for years, by the way. There's some things that I know too. I won't go into details about, but just be watchful. Pay attention to what's going on. Don't believe. Don't trust the mainstream media. The advice that I can give to you guys. Retain your purchasing power by buying physical precious metals, assets. Learn about survival. By the way, because the elites, that's one way they want to use biochemical warfare, weather modifications. They don't have our best interest at heart, and they're planning a one-world government, a new world order. This is very real. Whether who takes power or not, these are things we're going to need to be prepared, get prepared for, and be watchful. But I still believe that they're not invincible, but it's going to take a collective effort. People to wake up. I say stick with Band.video. Alex Jones overall, even though he's beefing with Candace Owens recently, has a good blueprint. I've been a listener for a number of years. I haven't, since he moved his products to the Alex Zone store, he mainly promotes. I haven't been able to buy any of his recent products. I still want to support him, but I have in the past. I've got his DNA Force supplement I bought twice, some other supplements. I've been a listener for a lot of years. His Fiji Magnesium. Those are some of the popular supplements from his InfoWars store. But every now and then, I go back to Band.video. He's partnered with other media organizations. He's moved from phase one and phase two. A lot of people don't understand. He's very well studied historically. Not saying that I co-sign or agree with him on everything, by the way. There's some things I know about history as well. Truth can be stranger than fiction, too, by the way. But I say he has a good blueprint. He understands the globalists and the ruling class elite, the Illuminati, the evildoers. They don't have our best interests at heart. But if we can expose them, shine a light on who they are, dox them, expose their images publicly, their agenda, we can destroy their plans for a one world government, or their future plans for transhumanism, where they want to get rid of all humans. And you all know Harari's own words, or Klaus Schwab, the fourth industrial revolution. We're going to have to collectively fight back against these people. And it's not going to just take prayer, not only prayer, but just saying faith without works is dead. God has not given us a spirit of fear, but a power, love, and a sound mind. So don't believe it's just going to take prayer. You can just pray this away. You're going to have to get active. You're going to have to get involved. You're going to need more people that are like women that are like Harriet Tubman, warriors like David in the Bible, how David took down Goliath. You're going to need more warriors. You're going to have to physically get involved, go operational, because these people mean business. And one lady was saying in an interview that they're successful with assassinating Putin. The globalists want intercontinental ballistic nuclear warfare. Because that way they want to reset everything. They want to wipe everyone off on the planet. Because Zygmunt Brzezinski mentioned before he died, he said the world is politically awake to who we are. They say they see the human population in high numbers as a threat to their agenda. Because they know if people really wake up to who they are and expose and combat against the evil that they're trying to cause, with the poisoning of our water supply, not telling us about real medicine, the med beds, the celestial chambers, the technology, life extension technology to heal people, things that are suppressed. They don't want you to know about these things because they want to keep this for themselves. And that shows proof. They don't have your best interest at heart. So don't take my word for what I'm saying. Just research, and you'll find the evidence out for yourself. Until next time, thank you guys for joining me, watching Dorsey's Resource, your host for this show. Until next time, may the force be with you guys. Take care. The marathon will continue. Peace.